Hi everyone, it's Angela from She Simply Impacts, and we're about to have another panel discussion. And I'm sort of chuckling to myself because we've been really talking about this before we even hit record, and a lot of stuff has been coming up because the topic today is ending a relationship. And Mary Wong is going to facilitate the discussion. And we've got here Mary Wong, Sabine Armbruster, Sashua Benay, and the beautiful Indrani. And I'll hand it over to Mary.
Thanks so much, Angela. This is going to be a really interesting conversation, I think, and especially going on the gold that's already come out before we even started recording. So I'm looking forward to that gold repeating itself as we continue to talk. Now, there's the thing about relationships. I think for a lot of people, when they hear the word relationship, they immediately think intimate relationship. And one of the things that Indrani was talking about just now is, what is a relationship? So I'm going to start with that question to Indrani because I think that's a really important start to the question, to the talk.
I just want to get the question right, Mary. Did you say, what is a relationship?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So for me personally and professionally, I think relationships, when I look at a relationship, when you look at our life and everything we do and the way we're born and everything shows us a part that relationships is part of who we are. And then with that part of who we are, everything we do from that place also stems from some kind of a relationship, whether it's a professional, whether it's a cleaner coming to our house, a hairdresser, or and external family members, or anything that we do, it's a relationship. If we're going to buy clothing, and if we're going to pre-paint our house, we have a connection to something. It's a relationship with things that we have. So I see relationship as the way that we connect to someone or something, and we exchange values, and there is a growth that happens together, and there is a sharing that takes place. Then there is give and take that takes place. And most of all is a deeper, meaningful understanding. So even if you have everything going amazing, the moment we lost the understanding, it's like if we say, we bought something that we really love it. We really love it. It looks really good. And we come home, we don't know how it works. The lack of understanding gonna kind of end that relationship not very well.
So we can end a purchasing relationship even.
Due to lack of
so
understanding.
There's a whole lot of levels. There's a whole lot of levels to this, right? And everyone here today is going to discuss their thoughts and feelings about ending relationships. And some of us here have ended relationships on a larger scale. Some of us have ended on a smaller scale. Some of us feel that we have a handle of it, and some of us feel that we don't. And I guess that's how it goes in society as a general. Sashua, if I was to ask you, have you ever ended a relationship, big or small?
Absolutely. I have ended multiple. I think when I was reflecting back on my life and coming into this conversation, and it's actually one of the speaking topics that I'm doing right now is about ending a relationship in my 20s, which was one of the most bold things I've ever done because, in life, sometimes we have these expectations of this recipe, depending on how we were brought up, that there's certainly in intimate relationships that we're expected to get married and have kids and have the white picket fence and, all of that sort of recipe of whatever it is in our culture and environment. And, some of us, and I certainly was in that in my 20s, spent a lot of time and energy trying to create that picture. And in doing so, found myself in a very challenging relationship in my early 20s that lasted 3 years, to the point where it was at its worst. And I was asked, "Will you marry me?" And a voice came out of me that I had no idea was there that said no with every core of my being. And I didn't know where it came from. It shocked me. I went, "Oh shit, did I just want to say that?" Because you know, part of me was so invested in that fairy tale of, well, everyone should get married, and I'm at that age that I should be getting married and having kids, and, you know, all of those things. And yet there was something in me that just couldn't do it. And I didn't even know what it is and what it was until years later, until I really unpacked it, you know, to understand what that situation was really going on. And, you know, had I continued on that route where it could have gone, and I just felt so lucky, I'm going to say, because I feel like it was despite me that that's what happened in that moment. But for me, it's like there's lots of different lenses we can look at relationships. You know, before we press the record button, I was talking about, well, leaving a coaching relationship in my earlier life was very tough because I was quite attached to that coach, but I really knew that I needed to move on. When I left corporate, felt like leaving a relationship, you know, because I was so invested in my corporate career. But now, as I've come to understand relationships, I guess through the energy side of things and understanding more that relationships for me are a real opportunity to evolve our understanding of ourselves. Quite often we step into relationships because the person that we're stepping into, whether it's an intimate relationship, a business relationship, you know, many different scenarios, there's something in them that we're attracted to, something that we feel we want to cultivate. And so by entering into that relationship, it's like we're starting to learn about that element. And that can be a very fruitful relationship and a very enriching relationship a lot of the time. Sometimes too, I feel from an energy point of view, we can step into relationships from the perspective of what haven't we resolved from our earlier life. And, you know, a lot of the work that I do, we take on a lot of imprints in our first 7 years, which I'm sure many people are familiar with that language. And quite often when we haven't completely resolved relationships with parents or significant others, we will in fact attract a person who is very similar energy to particularly our mother or father or significant person in our earlier years. And it's like we get a second take, a second opportunity to resolve those issues. And sometimes I think that's where people can find themselves in relationships that seem very familiar, even though the person is different. And that's a whole sort of education process in itself to understand ourselves and where we fit with that. Yeah, that's probably. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you. That's it's interesting because for you, that was almost like a divine intervention, that early relationship ending with that no that came from nowhere. You
That's
didn't even
exactly what it
recognize
was.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for some people there is a moment of realization where something happens and they go, that's it, I've got to get out of here. Angela, would you like to share, was there one of those sorts of moments that led to a decision where you needed to step out?
Yes, definitely. So a few years ago, when COVID hit and I was working as a coach, I'd been running my coaching practice for 2 years, and then I went and got a job as a coach because I wanted to keep coaching, and a job came up as a career coach, which I took, and it was a great job with the Australian Institute of Professional Counsellors, and it was really a transformational job for me, and it was like one of those divine interventions, and I was there for a year, but I knew at the end, like it got to a point where I was growing and transforming, and then it got to the point where that was pretty much it. That was the end of my transformation there, and I knew it, and I, you know, and I sort of, things weren't going well, and I wanted a pay rise, and my heart was beating when I went to ask for one, which isn't a bad ending, but you know, it just didn't, it went the way it was meant to, because I was meant to get out of it. And then there was a job to go back to. I knew when I was done. I just got to the point where I'm done, I've got to get out, and I resigned. And I had no job to go to. But I had been to quite a few interviews. And so that was one, which was quite hard. But another one recently was I got into a contra deal with another professional, and that didn't go well either. And I realized that there was a values clash, and that I had delivered all of my side of the contract and the other party hadn't. And it was just, and I just had to weigh it up. What happened was, ultimately, I just didn't, like, I could have kept going, but I just knew that I just made a clean break. Sometimes it was just like, I just have to make a clean break. And I did, and it was horrible. But it was good.
Why was it so horrible?
On just the conversation and just the lack of understanding, you know, like, because the other party didn't really understand why I was leaving. And so I felt, you know, so it was just really awkward. But I kind of realized that that's part of the reason why I left, because I knew that there was this clash, and it wasn't going to the same level of understanding, I suppose. And
so when you zoom out on that bigger picture, you can see that, you know, that you were doing the right thing, even though it was ugly in the moment.
Yeah, it was ugly in the moment. And I felt, but, you know, and I took responsibility, and I apologized for my part, and, you know, I did my best to sort of smooth it over, but it was just really awkward. But it was so draining. And that's the thing with these relationships, when they're not the right relationship, it's so draining. And I was so drained, and I was dreading the interactions. And so that's got to be a sign. If I'm dreading something, then it's not right. It's not a fit.
And sometimes when we are dreading something like that, we kind of hold back, and we don't go into that space, because it's really, really uncomfortable for us, right? Now, Sabine, I know when we were talking earlier, you said leaving, your comments on leaving relationships were, I'm going to let you say them.
My comment was, I am shit at ending relationships. And look, I'm thinking back to all the relationships I've had and what I've done over the years. And, you know, I think I'm self-employed. I think I'm a business owner for a reason. And that's probably because I don't have to end any relationships, except maybe move on from one stage of my life to the next. And I suppose in a way that's, you know, that's ending relationship to a certain degree as well. But, you know, I think when I think about relationships, I kind of just let them roll. I kind of just let them happen, and whatever happens, happens. And I don't ever really remember abruptly ending relationships. I've had a lot of businesses in my time, but they've kind of just rolled on from one to the next. And as far as relationship goes, you know, when I was a lot younger and in personal relationships, I think the most of those relationships, except one, was not ended by me. So, you know, I mean, when we're talking about those sort of relationships, I'm pretty shit at it. But what I've got to say is that for me, a relationship is all about building trust. It's all about communication. It's all about connection. You've got the values. Values have to, you know, be on the same level. And so for me, I think now at my age and looking forward, I'm choosy about my relationships and how I go into a relationship, because I know what I value in a relationship. So for me, when I talk about relationships, I think I look more into the future than what I do into the past.
Do you think that's because you've had a progression in your own personal learning, in your own understanding of self and what it is that you want as a woman, as a person, as you know, become more mature and more experienced with life? Do you think that has a lot to do with that?
Absolutely. You know, you see all those posts on social media about, you know, I'm now 50. I don't care what people say anymore. And, you know, I can do and say what I want and all this sort of thing. And I don't necessarily think that's ever going to be true. You know, there's some things that you want to hold close, and there's some things that you're prepared to let others know about. But yes, absolutely, Mary. I think developing as a person, especially in the last 10 to 12 years for me has been incredibly significant. Like, I've done a lot of work on myself. I've had a lot of different types of coaches, you know, whether they're business coaches or personal development coaches or mindset or, you know, challenging myself, whatever they are. I think the last 10 to 12 years have been absolutely significant. And I didn't go into it going, I want to be this person, or this is what I want to develop into. It just kind of flowed. You know, one thing led to another, and I went through one growth phase and then into another and into another, and it just kind of rolls. But I'm now at this phase where I trust the universe. You know, like I just, if a challenge comes up, I say, well, this is what I want. This is what I'm looking for. And it's so easy to say, don't worry about the how, but sometimes you just put it out there, let it go, don't think about it, subconsciously move towards it, or just, you know, go about your life, really. And it just kind of happens. I can't explain that. I really can't explain it. The other guys might be able to explain that better than me, but it's just happened, you know, like it just, and I think it's because I just don't stress over what's to come, over the relationships, but I do know what I want in a relationship.
Yeah, and I think knowing what you want is a big thing when you're moving forward. Sitting in that space of what you were saying about when you turn 50 and you don't have to worry anymore, but we still do. There are emotional challenges that come in when we're looking at any phase of life, anything in life. And Indrani, as I know that you work as a counsellor in the relationships field, so I thought perhaps maybe you might like to talk a little bit around that emotional roller coaster that comes around the end of a relationship, and maybe give us some ideas on how people might cope with those sorts of challenges that they're facing in having to end a relationship or having to move on from a relationship.
The key thing that I hear there, Mary, is having to end the relationship. So you use the word having to. So you see, the thing is that when a relationship is going to or potentially ending, that's the thing. It's why it's ending changes a lot of things. So if a person is ending a relationship themselves, they have made a decision, conscious decision. And quite often, Sashua shared that this no came out of nowhere. It came out of nowhere. Consciously, the sound came out of nowhere, but subconsciously, that no has been there for a long time. But it wasn't quite active. So we have a default network of our brain that would actually, by default, we will do things that our brain, we set a pattern to do. I do this because that's what I always done, etc. But when someone made a conscious decision, their coping comes from, what was my goal to end that relationship? What was I hoping for? Now, rather than me contemplating what happened, what didn't happen, if I can then shift my mind to, why did I decide to end? I obviously have a destination. What is my itinerary? How do I get there? What are my resources? What are my support? And what do I need to leave behind? What do I pack to take with me? And when you can decide that, then you'll be able to find the coping mechanisms that are going to work for you. But if we then decide to leave a relationship, then we contemplate, we talk to people, we tell people what happened, and we kind of, when we're ready to leave, you may be leaving physically, but subconsciously, you're not having left. So that would make it very difficult to cope. And if the relationship ended and you had to leave, you unexpected, you had no awareness, it was a shock to yourself, and that is the hardest thing ever. Because in that case, someone's world just ended. There was this shattering, there's so many things, the hopes, the self-esteem, the self-confidence, every single part of you is being impacted. And that's when I think it's really important to, once again, to pay attention to who choose to end it or why it's ending. So separating ourselves from the actual reason for ending. People often would say to me, obviously, I wasn't good enough. Obviously, I wasn't pretty enough. Obviously, I wasn't what he wanted. Obviously, I changed. Obviously, I fell out of love. I mean, so it's about, so we heard a few things in the relationship, their values, the communication and understanding. There's so many things. So relationships a little bit like a, you drive a car, and it's not going to just, we can't just park the car and get in the car and keep driving it, not put a fuel, not service the car. There's so many things goes into it. So when you're trying to cope with the brokenness of a relationship in that way, when it's happened unexpectedly, pay attention to everything that goes into a relationship. Not saying I was bad, it must be me. What are some things that was happening in the relationship that wasn't working? Maybe there was something you could have done differently. But then if somebody else made that decision, they made the decision. It came from their mind, their heart. They did not see the relationship the way you did. So there's a perception problem. There's a value problem, whatever that may be. I think the main thing I'm trying to get at here is depersonalize it as much as difficult it is. It's a very, very personal thing. And it's a bit like oxymoron saying depersonalize it. But you have to, because it cannot just be because of who you are. Sometimes it's not because of who you are. It's because of how you might have did things. So you don't have to think, okay, now I have to change who I am, or no one's going to love me because this person obviously couldn't love me. And
if you're not a fit, you're not a fit, right?
That's right. So it requires a deeper level of understanding. I keep going back to that. It is an understanding. Communication is a large part of relationships. But if you don't understand each other's emotional needs, where you're coming from, what each other's really, what's the ideal relationship for me, would be very different to ideal relationship for you. So if that's different, we can have an amazing communication, but the communication comes from a place of understanding. But if we don't really understand each other, I might be a very polite communicator, I might be open communicator, but it still comes from lack of understanding.
Yeah.
So again,
that's a big thing.
I just want to add that. Sorry. when you, because this is a really, really important question, because I see that inability to cope through separations, it can lead people into, great deal of pain and mental health issues and addiction and all kinds of things. So it's so important during that time of ending relationship, you choose who you talk to. You choose who you open to. Because when you talk to someone about a broken relationship, this is a very important factor. There are so many people with a broken relationship and broken wounds. So they might want to support you, they might love you very much, but they're going to come from a place of their brokenness. They're going to bring their wound. They're going to tell you how they would manage. And that might not work for you. So it's so important to choose very carefully and get help.
Yeah. And so look at seeing either a relationships therapist or a relationships coach, but somebody who's going to come from your map of the world, not from their, looking at it through their personal lens, is what you're saying, correct?
Yeah. And also, I would also encourage people, if people listening to this, refrain from going into resources that are written for global audience. They are not written for you. They are not written for your individual situation. This is a very deep area that really I find I'm passionate about, because I see what it's done to people. It actually can cause relationship to end, because we tend to label and diagnose people very quickly. So that.
Do you think we label and diagnose ourselves as well?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Because what we think is, okay, for example, if you come from work, you're very stressed, you had a really bad day, And so, you know, someone who haven't met you, or a friend of a friend walks in, they see you that day. They see your behavior, they see how you talk, and they can walk away and think, oh, I know what you are, but they don't know anything about you. So it can be, yeah, it can be. So avoid labeling, choose who you talk to, depersonalize, try to depersonalize some aspect of the relationship, and always remember that either you decided you have a destination you're going, or if someone else ended, remember that that was their decision based on who they are, not because of who you are.
And that comes down to self-compassion. Self-compassion is something that we all need, regardless of where we are in life, being kind to ourselves.
Absolutely.
Sashua, can I take you back to the situation that you were talking about in your 20s where the no came out? What, in the aftermath of that, were there times when you questioned yourself, your own your self-esteem, your self-worth, your value, because of suddenly not wanting to fit into that lovely imprinted mold that you were given in your first 7 years? Did that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I questioned the decision, you know, that bold decision that I made. I questioned, you know, whether that was a recipe that I'd put so much energy into, and was there any validity to that recipe anymore? And I guess, in fairness, a situation like that and a few others really led me to start looking at the common denominator. And of course, the common denominator was me. You know, in all of these relationships and situations and things that we all have in life, the only common denominator is us. And so, just as we've been talking, I've been really reflecting on, you know, the most important relationship that we all have is the one we have with ourselves. And if we continue to ignore that, and I'm going to say sometimes try and fill a gap we might be feeling inside of ourselves and fill it with someone else, then we're possibly, you know, like attracts like, we're going to be attracting someone who may also, you know, feel that lack of wholeness. And, you know, two halves don't necessarily make a whole in that situation. And that's really what I would have reflected on that earlier relationship in my 20s. And I think it's something that, you know, I've certainly invested a lot of time and energy into understanding the importance of my relationship with myself. And I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but if you think about like the guys you dated in your younger life, you know, or guys, girls, whoever you were dating in your younger life, you know, was there kind of a type, you know, a type of person that you sort of ended up attracting, maybe some personality traits, if it wasn't just looks per se, a more persona or character? And I can relate to my earlier life that I was always attracted to a certain type. And since I've done all sort of the energy work and the inner work, I realized that they were different versions of my father. You know, that gregarious, you know, happy-go-lucky personality, you know, big energy, big structure, all of that, very similar to my father. And those relationships were just terrible, you know, because there was, you know, we all have a lot to resolve with our parents. And you know, that's why we choose them, I believe, from an energy perspective, because they can be such a mirror to us. Whereas now that I've gone through a massive deep dive, and I remember this really funny moment, I was in a very deep dive spiritual course, and I said to the universe, right, that's it. This is a few decades ago. I said, do not send me anyone for a relationship. I'm done. I've had enough. That's it. I just want to focus on myself. I just want to do my own thing. And I said, if you ever want to send me someone that you really feel is meant for me, that would, you know, enrich my life, you have to make it so obvious that I cannot miss the signs, right? Other than that, that's it. I'm done. I'm out. And years passed, and I was having a wonderful time just enjoying my own company and being in stillness with myself and really enriching the relationship I had with myself. And then, of course, the sign came a few decades later, not decades, a few years later. And the sign came and I was like, really? Like, it was an unmistakable sign, as I'd asked for, like literally just unmistakable. And I was kind of like, you know, I had this little, yeah, but is he really my type? Like, it wasn't anything like the relationships I'd had in my younger life, right? And I'm like, really? That's interesting. Anyway, I sat with it and sat with it. And then I met the person a second time and I'm still sitting with it. And just destiny brought us together literally 3 times by my vehicle breaking down 100 meters within their workshop. You know, that I could not ignore the signs anymore. And completely different personality type, even physique, everything, to anyone I had ever been with before. And so I guess what I'm talking about, oh, and by the way, I'm with him now and we're about to have our 6-year anniversary, is that it's really all about us. It's about how we feel about ourselves and our own journey. And I believe once we get a good hold on that, and you know, that's an never-ending learning opportunity, of course. But at some point we start to get a sense, you know, for who we really are, not the hats we wear and not the cloaks that we wear and all of those things. We're getting much more into the true essence of who we really are. You will start to attract people that are a very complementary energy to you. And yes, there are still lessons to learn, of course. They've got strengths that you want to learn about, and you've got strengths that they want to learn about. And from an energy perspective and our unique vibration of energy, that's where a relationship can be very expansive and very enriching in that way. And sometimes I think we don't get to that point until we've had our share of experiences to go, I don't want that anymore, which is what I said to the universe in my language. But, you know, in the future, if there is something really that will enrich my life, then I'm open to it. But, you know, hit me over the head, so to speak, not literally, to let me know, you know, and follow then the truth of that. So we're not coming at it from a neediness. We're not coming at it from a lack of. We're coming at it from just the pure joy of experiences and expansion.
The pure joy of experiences. Isn't that a delicious thought? What's fascinating there is that you've shared both sides of what can happen there. So the getting out of one and how it led to you finding you completely so that you can be in a relationship that's perfect. Or can I use the word perfect there? Is the relationship perfect, or does it still have its moments?
Well, it's interesting because what is perfect? I would never want to put perfect on a relationship. It's perfect for the circumstances that I'm in and need right now. It's pretty, can I say bloody? It's pretty bloody good. But
I think we're gathering that by the smile.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So I think it's important not to have expectations on relationships that they're going to fulfill something that we think we need. I think when we've got a neediness around something, that can be a bit of a recipe for almost not getting it because our expectations are just getting in the mix too much. And so I very much appreciate, from an energy perspective, what I'm here to learn from him and what he's here to learn from me. And we've got very aligned values and all of those things. So I guess when we come at it from that perspective, just every day is new experiences, you know, and lovely ones.
Well, that's a lovely thing to hear. And I know that you've been through that situation where life had to change dramatically and you had to renegotiate or reevaluate your position in life and how you were going to move forward from that space. Talk to me about the healing that happened after that, after all of that transition period.
Sure. So
or through that transition period even.
Absolutely. So like what Indrani was saying, like, so my ex-husband left me, but this is really interesting. It was, I think it was 2008, 15 years ago, or 16 this year. And, but what's really interesting, once when I went on a retreat, I went on a 30-day Vipassana retreat when we were still married. And on that retreat, this kind of thing came up my body and into my mind, and it said, leave him.
Mm.
But I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I stayed. And so even though I didn't see the earth, it coming, I guess on one level, I caused it. I had a part to play because it wasn't working for me anymore. But a bit like Sabine, I'm terrible at ending relationships. I'm actually really bad at it. And so even though I knew that this wasn't working, and then it just got worse and worse and worse, I caused it to get worse and worse and worse, so that because I don't think I could go on anymore. But wouldn't it have been
Mm-hmm.
better if I just ended it myself? Anyway, doesn't about that. But the healing journey, so even though he was saying at the time this is mutual, but to me it wasn't mutual, because subconsciously it might have been mutual, but it wasn't consciously mutual. And so it was like an earthquake, exactly what Indrani was saying, that it was very shattering, and everything just shattered, and all my foundations collapsed. But the most amazing, and then I had to really start the real work on myself. And what did the real work on myself mean? It meant that I firstly had to own my part in it. I had to own who I was being, and who I was being wasn't really who I want to be. But I kept being it because I felt, for a lot of reasons. And so then the healing journey was really all about looking at my codependency. I went to Codependence Anonymous. I went to relationships. I went to, just looking at all my addictions, all my codependencies. Just, I wasn't whole within myself. And so I had to learn what that meant. And I think that is definitely a work in progress. So don't get me wrong. I think it's definitely, becoming whole is a work in progress. And right now I'm in a bit of a transition, a little bit again, just in the sense that I've been in like a cocoon, and with my current relationship, but now there's been a major adversity, and he's got cancer and is going through chemotherapy treatment. And so everything's completely changed. And so that's kind of rocked my world again. And so, but the thing is, and my daughter's just had a baby. And so I've found myself away for 5 weeks in this big house by myself, 10 minutes away from my daughter's place. And it's like the perfect place for me to be, to actually revisit who I am again. Who am I on my own? And how can I fill my own cup without needing someone else? So it's really interesting, because my partner's sick. He's going through chemotherapy. He's had to stay in Brisbane, and I'm here, and so it's really quite, but what I'm discovering or rediscovering is that my journal is my best friend. I'm really an artist at heart. So I'm sort of reconnecting with a lot of things about myself and learning what I love and how to make the most of being in solitude. And that's, so I guess it's that journey of being in solitude and finding my own feet within that, and feeling like I can still thrive. It's like, how can I thrive in solitude?
So finding a way around all of the bumps that happen along the way that kind of reshape you, and going, no, I don't actually want to be that shape. I want to be me. And finding your way back to you is all part of that healing process, isn't it? It's all.
Yes, it definitely. And one sort of distinction is that I had to, so, like the relationship ended, and so I had a lot to learn about myself, and I feel like I did my best to put myself through that journey so I could get the learnings that I needed. And then, you know, then I had 2 terrible relationships before I got with my current partner. But in that relationship, I was never fully a we. I was always a me. It's like I was always had the freedom. I flourished really in that relationship, that my current one. I've flourished, and I've really grown, and I'm not enmeshed. So I never enmeshed myself like I did in the first marriage. I was not a me, I was a we. I didn't even know what me meant. Whereas in this relationship, I've definitely not enmeshed, and I've definitely got my own foundations, which, you know, She Simply Impacts is part of that foundation, and, you know, all you beautiful women. But, you know, so that's really important, was that I never, and so to me, a relationship that allows you to flourish and be a whole person yourself is obviously a lot more healthy than a relationship that demands you to submit something.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important, that keeping your sense of self, and maybe also your goals, having your own goals and where it is that you want to go in life. Sabina, you've talked about how your life's kind of flowed from one thing to the next, rather than having a big chopping end and then having to restart. But even with the flow and the changes that you've been through, there would have been changes in goals that you needed to make, and changes in, you know, how to recreate your goals, or where you're going to go next and what you're going to do. Talk to us about how it is to reclaim your life when your goals have changed, how to get back in that space of feeling like you're still where you want to be.
Look, I'm one to surround myself with people that distract me. And I find that, and when I say that, it's not that I'm ignoring what's happening. It's that, so a friend of mine messaged me today, right? My father has Alzheimer's. He's in bed. He can't speak. He can't, you know, can't do anything anymore. The text was there a group that we were in touch with when this first started to help us through the situation? And my reply was, I always found it very depressing to go into those groups, because I would find people that were a lot further ahead than me in the journey, and I would hear these stories of places where I may be going, but was I going to go there? I don't know. I didn't want to go there, you know, and so it pulled us apart. So I found it a lot easier for me to surround myself with my friends and talk about things that were completely unrelated, you know, and really just find that sense of happiness in just general conversation, or things that were coming up, events that we organised, or things we did together, you know, even if it was as close as tomorrow night, you know, or as far away as, I don't know, going away for a weekend together in 6 months' time. All those things, I found, they are a distraction, but it's like they took the weight off my shoulders, you know. So that's what I tend to do. Is it's not that I reset my goals, or that I find a new path, or that I need to go down a different path. I don't necessarily need to do that. I just surround myself with the people that I know will lighten or make the journey easier. And I think what Indrani said before about taking information from the internet is so true, because it is very general and it may not be for you. And so what I do with my friends is, that's something that I've worked out that works for me. And, you know, I may be good at compartmentalizing things, and I may be good at not talking about things, but that's okay, because I can step over that line and say, I've left that behind, whether it's for now or forever, whatever it is. Maybe I need to step over that line a few times, but I know I have amazing people that I can call, even if it's the girls that I exercise with in the mornings, you know, just the general conversation over coffee afterwards. It's just that, just leave things behind for a little bit and talk about something light. You know, that's what I need to move forward with things.
So rather than like pulling the scab off over and over and over, just giving it time to do its own thing and heal a little bit, would you say it's sort of like that?
Yeah, it is. And look, there are relationships that take a long time to end. And, you know, you can be torn. Do I end it? Don't I? You don't know what's right. You don't know what's wrong. And you can sit with it, but then you get back into the real world and then you start this whole, you know, argument in your head again. But yet when you do something that you enjoy, and sometimes it's sitting in the grass, or sometimes it's, you know, sometimes it's actually getting onto social media and finding things that make you laugh. You know, like I had one of those weekends the other weekend. I found this, oh my God, these dad jokes. And I literally sat there, one after the other came, and I literally sat there and laughed for about an hour. My kids thought I was mad, but God, I felt good afterwards. You know, so for me, it's those things. And then you go, oh, that was just amazing. I don't want to stop. I've got to stop. I've got other things to do, but I feel amazing and I can do anything now.
Do you think that when you sit in that space of going, I'm just going to lighten it up and have a bit of fun for a while, you're intuitively allowing yourself to heal by raising all of those happy hormones that make you feel a whole lot better?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think the important thing is to not think too much about that either. You just it happened.
Let it flow.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's that flow theme. You've definitely got a flow theme going here today. Thank you. I love that. We all learn lots of lessons about ourselves as we go through, and clearly you've got a good understanding of what works for you. Indrani, what sort of lessons, you know, I feel that we often learn lessons from our clients. We don't just learn lessons from ourselves, we learn lessons from our clients too. What sort of lessons have you learned about yourself and relationships from your experience of working with people in relationships and from your own relationships experience?
Look, for me, I'm working with clients now, but like Angela, my journey didn't start, you know, as knowing everything and what to do. My journey did start from a place of vulnerability, and so I had to learn the hard way too. For me, there was no warning. Well, maybe that's not true. I think there was warning. I just didn't know that I was so vulnerable. The word a lot of people told me was gullible, and all of those things. And we created trust. I relate to what Sashua was saying, that relationship with ourselves is the number one. So for me, you know, at that point, I didn't know any of those things. You know, I was young. I trusted this person with everything because everything was great at first. So I had learned quite a bit about myself and what went wrong and why I stayed so long for 12 years of, you know, crying myself to bed, so on. But then when I started to work with people, that's when I started to really look at that what I said earlier about this information that given to you is global. It's not for you. And I remember recently someone that helping me with admin told me it was 999 person that we were, you know, scheduling. And I burst into tears and I cried because there was a lot of stories. And I remember I don't normally look at notes because sometimes can be sad, sometimes can be empowering. But I just kind of, I have a little coding things where, you know, where I remind myself when a person comes, what was the main goal we're focusing on. So I kind of looked at some of these things and I thought to myself, it is so different. The problems are the same. My husband had an affair with a secretary, he left. My partner had depression, he couldn't do it anymore, he left. The circumstances are very similar. But what I learned from my clients is what it does to a person, how they respond to it, how they go about it, what they used to cope with, what they do next. It is all incredibly unique. It's been demonstrated by what everyone shared today. It's part of what everyone shares in it, but it's in a very unique way. So for me to come into this space of relationship coaching and therapy, I remember my very first couple that I had. I thought my job started and just ended. That's how I felt after the first session. I remember emailing them and seeing if they were okay, because I think I just try to fix everything. Let's just fix it. Oh, I can see what's wrong. Let's fix it. That was where I went. And it was very obvious that was my first session. And so I learned so much from this client, that uniqueness about them, and that we cannot treat any relationship and say, yes, I've been there too, I know exactly what you should do. But what you can say is, I feel what you feel. I see you, I hear you, but I can't really tell you exactly that you should do what I did. But I'm willing to listen to you with my heart and everything that I have. Together we can perhaps support you to see what exactly you need to do in this particular situation at this point in time. So I think what I learned from them was that uniqueness about it. And I learned from them is, I don't really have the answer for them, but I have the heart and the tool and the commitment to be able to support them to find those tools.
Because the answers are within them, right? It's not for us to tell other people.
If any
what
of us
their
think we
answer
have it, we can harm them, to be honest, because that we will take away from what they meant to be doing, what they need to be doing, because we start to counter transference into what they. So that's something I when I say I learned from the clients, because I didn't really learn that at my master's or my bachelor's or all this years of study. And I remember saying to one of my couples, thank you so much for helping me grow. I would say to them, that was amazing, I learned something today. That was amazing, I didn't think of that. So it's wonderful. It's a place to be in, to be able to learn from them and grow all the time.
And we learn and grow from our clients, and we learn and grow from our experiences.
Absolutely.
And every one of us is different.
Yes.
Every one of us is different. You are absolutely right about that. Sashua, if you had advice to give to someone who's considering ending a relationship, what would your advice be, following on from that discussion?
Yeah. Well, I think the key there is not to advise. The key is to actually encourage people to listen to their own unique inner voice. There is such a truth teller within us, and sometimes we don't give it any airtime. We don't give it any credence. We don't give it any opportunity to develop. And I find that a lot of people avoid stillness. They fill their lives with all sorts of activities or scrolling or, something to keep them distracted, TVs on in the background, so that they can't actually hear and connect in with, their own thoughts. And there's different levels even within that we can tune into. Is it our thoughts, or is it more our heart space, or pointing down to my tummy right now, is it more of a deeper soul resonance within us? And I think we know we all have it mostly, but sometimes it can feel quite bold to actually be still enough to want to hear the answers. It does take courage.
Bravery, correct?
Yes,
courage. It takes bravery. Yeah.
And the truth is,
sorry.
just quickly to end that, is that we are only going to hear what we're ready to hear. And if we can trust
Mm.
that, then we might just give ourselves a few more opportunities to hear it and heed it as well.
Mm. Mm. Sabina, I was going to ask you, like you said that you're not good at ending relationships, that you're not good at having those conversations. Is there something that would make that easier?
Ooh, what a big question for someone that
It is,
doesn't
isn't
end
it?
relationships well. Do you know, Mary, I think what makes it easier is growing as a person, you know, and I think it does come back to what Sashua was just saying. It's understanding you. What is it that you want? Where are those messages coming from? I don't necessarily think there is a particular thing that will ever help me end relationships other than asking myself questions, you know, are we aligned? What do I want? Am I getting what I want from this relationship? You know, am I able to be myself? Or do I feel like I can't speak up? You know, it's all those sort of questions, I think, that for me, I need to be able to answer. And they're the things that fulfill me. And,
Mm.
you know, you can, I don't know, there's always so much more time in life. You know, we go, oh, well, you know, we're in our 50s or 60s or wherever you are. There's always still a lot of years left. You know, so why would you not think of relationships as something that, you know, you want to enjoy for the rest of your time? I think that's really worth thinking about. And, you know, you matter. You really do matter, you yourself, to you. And I'm not saying that any relationship is going to be perfect, but if you can have an open conversation, and that comes from, again, are you able to speak your mind? Are you able to say what you want, say what you need, voice your opinions? You know, if you've got that, well, then there's always room to move. There's give and take in every relationship. I don't know if there's something that would really help. I think that I'm quite happy with where I am at with ending relationships or evolving from relationships. But I think that's just come from years of being and understanding who I am and what I want.
Mm. I love that you finished that with I'm quite happy with who I am and where I am, because I think that that's one of the biggest parts of this, isn't it? Is sitting in self, in that space of this is who I am, this is what I want, this is what's important to me, and this is how I'm going to do my life because this is my life. And I always say that the only person who you've got to live with for all of your years is you. So whether you are in a relationship with someone else or not, that's icing on the cake. That's not the cake. Your life's the cake. That's how I look at it. And how about you? Is there something you would like to finish off with today? Because I'm going to leave it with you at the end here. I'm going to pass back to you to finish off. And is there something in particular that you would like to share as you finish off today's session? I want to thank everyone. I think you've all been very brave and very open. And I just think it's marvelous that we're able to have these discussions, because I think that everybody can gain something from what we've got to share. So I'm going to leave it with you now, Ange, to finish off with your last thought for the day.
Okay, wonderful. So I guess to me, my last thought is that this discussion is not exhaustive by any means. I think this is a very big topic. The topic of relationship probably made me realize that it would be worth having a few more panels on this, because the other thing that we didn't touch on was, you know, when friendships end, and you know, and the devastating impact that can have, and if you know, when you go to actually try and deepen a relationship by being really authentic, but it backfires and it doesn't work and it ends the relationship, you know. So this is just such a big topic, but I think that we've touched the surface, And my inspiration really is that we, you know, keep sharing and keep bringing these big things that we're all dealing with in our lives, you know, into these open panel discussions. And so I'd just like to thank everyone for a start, and mainly just probably end it there and say, well, there's probably going to be a part 2 and 3 of this. So thank you.
I'd say so.
Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to the team here. You're just amazing, and this will be up on our YouTube channel, and if you haven't liked and shared our YouTube channel, please do. So take care and bye for now. Bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye.